Dragon's Dogma 2. Digital Foundry Clips is saying that this might be the next level or next evolution for Capcom's RE engine. I guess this is just me not, I guess, realizing. I knew it was Capcom. I didn't realize that they were giving Dragon's Dogma 2 the RE engine. I'm always just stuck thinking RE engine, it's for Resident Evil and that's it. But I'm always like surprised when I hear that it's being used for something else. So apparently it's running on that, and they're going to explain why it's an evolution of it.
Another game that caught our attention at State of Play 2024 had to be Dragon's Dogma 2 from Capcom. Obviously, we're looking at an evolution of the RE engine here. It's doing things... Well, this is the great thing about RE, right? Which is that as new games come along that sort of push boundaries in different genres, RE has to evolve to accommodate that. And we're seeing that again here with Dragon's Dogma 2, and it looks absolutely terrific. Oliver, your thoughts, please.
I know some people got upset with one of the Luke Stevens live clips we did where I was pointing out that like some of the recording quality from IGN specifically was really poor and it made the game look bad. I'm not saying that Dragon's Dogma 2 will necessarily look bad. Well, my point with all that stuff was that IGN's recordings that they were presenting on their channels were at like 1080p maybe. It was very, very low quality recordings, low bit rate 1080p too. Like they're just very, very poor recordings. And so it makes the game look worse than it actually does. In these recorded like trailers that they released during like the summer showcases and stuff, I think the game looks really, really good. It's just very stark seeing these trailers that look very sharp, very good. And then they do all of this promotional stuff with IGN that looks way worse because the recordings they're giving to IGN or that IGN is getting is really, really poor. It's crazy. Yeah, really low res video. It's very strange. And like, I do want to say this isn't always the fault of say IGN. Sometimes it's that like when I go to preview events, this happened with, I think it was Skull and Bones at one point. No, it wasn't Skull and Bones. It was with another one like a while back, but there was a preview event where we played the game virtually and then they recorded the gameplay on their end on the computer that was in Austin, Texas or whatever. And then later they sent the gameplay recording to me to edit the video with. So I could record straight off of my streamed gameplay, like basically capturing gameplay footage through xCloud. Sometimes the recording that they send you as the creator was captured poorly because the person that's like setting up the settings for the capture event, they're not always like media or content creators. They're just like somebody in IT that quickly set like, oh, do high quality recording 1080p, whatever. And they just go for it because the monitor they're playing on might be 1080p or because they're just trying to save bandwidth or recording file sizes, whatever. They just set it for like 1080p and then they just call it good. But that doesn't always make the game look as good as it can. The one company that always seems to do a really good job of this though is like PlayStation. They always provide incredibly high quality assets because they want their games to look as good as possible. And I think that that's something that all of these companies need to make sure their marketing teams are doing is if our game runs at 4K, only give creators 4K 60 footage. Even you can put it in your contracts. I've had like sponsorship deals. Like you guys know, I've taken like I let brands or not brands, publishers sponsor like I tried videos as long as I'm allowed to say whatever I want to say about the game. Like sure, pay me and I'll share your game with my audience. I'm fine with that. I've done deals like that where they have contractual requirements that I have to upload in 4K, that the gameplay has to be captured in 4K at 4K 60. And like if you can't meet these bit rate requirements, they cut a portion of your fee. There's all sorts of stuff like that comes into play with a lot of these companies. And it just seems like for Dragon's Dogma 2, there's been an issue where a lot of journalists have posted videos with horribly low quality footage. And it might be an issue of maybe just miscommunication. It might be just that the people making the videos are kind of tossing gameplay together. They don't think it's that big of a deal, but I think it is. Like nowadays people are so nitpicky. If there's blurry footage of the game, they're going to assume that the game looks like crap because they've been burned so many times by companies that put forward trailers for games that look really good, like we just saw with Anthem in the last segment, where then they downgrade it. So people are just naturally at this point attuned to being screwed over by big companies. And you can't give anybody any ammunition, especially when it's something as easy as just providing higher resolution gameplay footage. So I want to be clear. I think Dragon's Dogma 2 looks really, really good. I think they have a problem where for some reason, a lot of these big outlets are making it look way worse than it actually looks when you're playing it because they're getting or using really low quality footage. It's weird.
Oliver, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I thought it looks fantastic. Like you said, it is basically, I mean, the first real proper current gen exercise of the RE engine, I'd have to imagine. In terms of the feature set, I think it does look quite a bit better than other RE engine titles, which have thus far been cross-gen titles to my recollection. So they've been a bit more restrained. And this looks really good. It is at 30 FPS, which I hope they do have a high frame rate mode in there because of the style of game this is. But outside of that, I mean, I think it looks
Do you think
perfect.
it's 30 or unlocked?
It's unlocked, and I can tell from this trailer. And so I played an hour of this game at TGS, and that was feedback I gave to them. Not that they would necessarily be able to. I don't know how much. Basically, I think this is a game that should have an optional frame rate cap.
Right.
Because the way it played then and the way it looks in this trailer, the frame rate's kind of all over the place, where it's anywhere from like the 20s up to 60. And that sucks. It does not feel good.
So John, who knows what he's talking about, he says he can tell from the trailers and stuff that at least the versions of the game that they're using for these promotional things are variable and are unlocked. That jives with what we've seen, where like some clips and some trailers look like it's running at 60, others look like they're crawling in the like mid 20s. It's very inconsistent. Some people have wondered if some trailers are being recorded in performance mode, others are being recorded in fidelity mode. He seems to think that it's just uncapped. Whatever the game's able to render at, the console will put out. I mean, in my personal experience, this is where I want to know from you, chat. Like, do you like it when the game is just totally uncapped and does whatever it can manage? And sometimes it's really high frame rate, other times it drops and crawls, or do you prefer a more consistent frame rate? For me personally, I prefer a steady frame rate. I would rather play at a locked 30 than a 40 that sometimes goes to 50 and other times goes to like 25. I like it more locked and consistent. When it's inconsistent for me, it makes me like motion sick. I don't know what it is about my brain. It does not like frame rates constantly changing. Even if I'm playing like a really easy to run game or a really well optimized game on my like supercomputer that I have here, and it's going from like 120 frames a second down to 90 back to 120, that even makes my brain freak out. I can't handle that. So it worries me that he's saying it looks to his expert eye to be totally uncapped, and that he's giving them feedback at these events that they should probably give like a capped version to players, and they still have not clarified it. Because as of right now, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody in chat, it seems to me that they have still not, and I can double check it here, they've still not confirmed if there's a performance mode or what. I don't think that they've said how this game is running or what settings will be available to anybody. All of the recommended performance stats are like for running at 30 frames. So like even on Steam, the recommended hardware is based off of 4K 30 or 1080p 30. They aren't recommending it based off of higher frame rates, which makes me think that they're not expecting it to get that high. But it's going to be, I don't know. They still have not said anything, which to me, I think that is concerning. I would just rather them say there's no performance mode, it's all uncapped. Or I'd rather them come out and say on console, it's just performance mode. That's it, locked at 30. We experimented with the 60 frame version. It just wasn't working out, so we're going to delay that till after launch. If they just were clear and upfront, I think it would be great. But I don't like when companies are so wish-washy and non-committal with it. I understand it might still be in flux, but I think if you're going to ask people to like pre-order your game, or at least like plan on buying it, if not pre-ordering it, then you need to be a little more transparent. Similar things happened with Starfield, where people were wondering what the frame rate caps were going to be. And to their credit, they did come out and clearly say, we're targeting 30 FPS. There was a long buildup of them like kind of dancing around the topic before they just finally came out and said it. But as we saw, once they said it was 30, everybody was like, okay, bummer, whatever. And that's it. Like, you just have to be like, say what it is. lock it down. Some people will throw fits for a little bit, but then you can just move on. Everybody will kind of burn out on complaining about it.
And it lacks consistency. VRR might help some, especially on Xbox, right? And is this coming to PC? This is coming to PC, right?
You'd expect so.
Yeah, so PC would probably be fine, but that's my only real complaint with everything that they've shown, is that the frame rate is just all over the place. And at the same time, one could argue that that's part of the Dragon's Dogma experience. So
it's not a desirable part. Though,
it's not a bug, it's a feature.
But maybe it's a throwback. Like, remember this, guys? Remember the frame rate?
Come on. Sorry, Oliver, you were in the middle of your observations there.
Yeah, I mean, scrolling through this trailer, it is more variable. It just looked like 30 to me because it is like hovering around roughly that point. But yeah, if this is unlocked, then that's not a great sign. And Capcom has a bit of a history with unlocked frame rates in games. I think even with VRR, this wouldn't be that great. It is quite a variable experience down and getting to certain lows that you don't really want to see in a title. So yeah, I hope they do fix that, or at least cap it, because on consoles,
optional.
Yeah, on consoles, I don't think that would make for too great of an experience.
So anything from an engine perspective, I mean, obviously the sort of wide open scope of it is pretty impressive. I mean, you know, what could I say? Character design, monster design, effects work. RE is just brilliant. It just seems to be getting better and better.
Yes, so I agree.
It is crazy what like the wide range of types of games that the engine is able to run. It's very, very impressive.
Rich, it is improving with each game, but the thing that really separates Dragon's Dogma 2, I think, from other RE engine games and games in general is the sort of the physicality of the battles. The creatures that you fight are often large, and we've seen plenty of large creatures in games before, right? It's not an uncommon thing, but I feel like in general, it's like they're just an object that's animated and they're placed inside of this map, and they have minimal impact on the environment around it, and the player's interaction with it usually amounts to doing swing animations and some basic sort of collision occasionally, and and that works well from a gameplay perspective. But this is a game that's sort of, the enemies very directly interact with the world. They break down trees, crumble buildings. You can climb on the enemies, mantle them. When you see there's like a griffin or some kind of creature that flies over the village at one point in the trailer here that takes down buildings with it, and it really feels physicalized in a way that reminds me actually of something like I guess The Last Guardian or Shadow of the Colossus kind of stuff, but with even more granularity, of course. Or that scene where there's like a large tusk creature swinging sort of a club in the middle of the forest, and you sort of see all the trees sort of bend and sway as he does it. I think it's the physicality of these interactions that really separate it from other action games.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And that's I think that's really difficult to pull off. Having multiple super detailed, well animated models interacting with one another in that way, that's hard to implement and not something we often see. So yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it does. I mean, nobody's doubting that it's a heavy game to run. It's going to be a lot. There's a lot going on. There's a whole lot going on in this game, which is why it's so compelling, why people are so interested in it. But I do think people expect a certain consistency of performance. I think PC gamers are more tolerant of iffy performance stats, because it's like the understanding is, if I want the game to run well on my PC, I need the better hardware. Like people understand that. But on console, for console players, there's an expectation that you're always going to at least meet, at the very least, steady 30. If you have to drop to 1440p to hit it, okay, like that's a bummer on modern hardware, but at least consistent 30. The second you start talking about games dropping down into the 20s, people start to get very much turned off. And the thing with this game is that it seems that it's very much like it, in times it's up at 60, other times it drops down into the 30s, other times it's in the 20s. And this is something you can see by frame counting in the trailers that they've put out. Now, some of the trailers that they've put out have like 60 FPS modes or 60 FPS sequences that are super smooth, and then other moments are really, really slow and sluggish. I'm going to be very interested to see if they have gone about polishing it up or what improvements they've been able to make, because I think the game looks great. I still think that this is a game that probably when it launches does okay, and then in the weeks following, clips of people fighting big monsters start to go viral. They start to go viral on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and everywhere. And at that point, I think the game starts to sell even better just through word of mouth. And at that point, it starts to really pick up steam. That's my expectation, my prediction. So that's where I'm at. I couldn't care less about 30 versus 60. Makes no difference in my enjoyment of the game. Yeah, I think for this type of game, it's not as important. Like for a third-person adventure game with like action, of course, within it, but it's at its core probably adventure more than anything else, with the big maps and everything and tons of monsters. I think 30 is tolerable. It's for like first-person shooters, where I think going below 60 gets really rough for the modern gamer. A lot of people kind of expect 60 for shooters. And I think part of that is like Call of Duty has kind of bred that expectation into them. And it's not a bad expectation to have. Like I think 60 for a first person shooter especially makes a lot more sense and greatly improves the player experience. Like a lot. Where do they have monster reveals? Action system, monsters. Face the monsters that inhabit this world. Okay, so drakes. A monster of the dragon family. The drake spits out powerful flames. It also possesses the intelligence to skillfully manipulate magic. If you encounter one, be prepared for an all-out battle. A Dullahan. It's a knight covered in a spiritual purple flame. Cradling his own head in his arm, he engages in deadly swordplay. With a firm stance in the dark, he transforms into a black mist and stalks the living. Oh, that's cool. That's just badass. That's cool. A Talos. I wonder if he's principled. Introducing Talos, the bronze giant from the legends. Rising from the sea, its massive frame can walk over valleys with ease. Just like a divine punishment, it mercilessly brings chaos to the land. Dude, that thing's going to be crazy to fight. Jesus, where do you even start? I guess you'd probably have to climb it. Like jump on its leg and climb all the way up to its eye or something. A white, of course. A priest spirit that still holds a grudge, eventually becoming a monster. It hides in darkness, casting powerful spells in succession from the sky. It makes upfront fights difficult by wielding a huge amount of magic. I believe it. Or from a cliff. Yeah, I guess it was technically on a cliff. There's also these like stakes in it. So maybe that's a mechanic too, where like you launch these somehow. I don't know. They've got the knack. It's a type of goblin that wields a long weapon. They are agile on elevated terrain and good at raiding from higher ground. Underestimate their mobility and you may be easily overpowered. Yes, swarms. That is one thing that this game seems... They've primarily shown like 1v1 fights. They've not really shown a lot of like swarms that I remember. Maybe it's because when there's extra swarms, maybe the frame rate takes even more of a nosedive. I don't know. Minotaurs, of course, we've seen a handful of these. Ferocious and extremely fierce bull-headed monsters. A single hit from their battle axe or charge attack can be fatal, I believe. Can you imagine if these things were real? Just imagine how much, like how horrifying a Minotaur would actually be in real life. I mean, it would be horrifying. I'm so glad that that's not a thing. Cyclops, monstrally strong one-eyed giants. They wield huge weapons with ease and won't back down from a fight. Strike their lone eye with ranged attacks or test your bravery by climbing and attacking the eye directly. For real, dude. I just love Cyclopses, because it's, you know, the old tale is that the whole reason that Cyclopses were kind of developed as a concept was because they came across like elephant or mammoth skulls. And when you look at a mammoth skull, it kind of looks like it just has one big eye hole. And so you see like that mixed with the horns off the sides, you can start to kind of understand how somebody that would stumble on this skull, if it was just the skull, might think that this was like a humanoid with just one big eye. When in reality, I mean, once you find the rest of the skull, or rest of the skeleton, it makes more sense what it is. But if you just found the skull, you could see this. I'm guessing it's probably like a wives' tale, or maybe not wives' tale. It's a misconception that that's actually how it started. But that's the thing. Like every history teacher I've ever had was like, and in, you know, Roman or Greek mythology, the Cyclops is there. And did you know how Cyclopses came to be? And you know, who knows if it's actually true. What if it was a mammoth cyclops? Oh my God. Oh my God. Rattlers. These things look fun. Back seems to be covered in rocks. They appear on mountainous terrain and can be mistaken for a giant rolling boulder. Try to knock them down. Aim for the weak spots on their stomach. Choppers, little fellers, little goblins that lurk in the shadows of the deep forest. Griffins, these are the ones I'm excited for because these things just look badass. I've always loved griffins. I just think they're so cool. Let's see, undead, of course, we got zombies, some zambies appear in the darkness. They're vulnerable to fire and holy attacks. Skeletons perpetually wander in death, though they are nothing but bones. The curse placed upon them allows them to keep moving. Beware the fast movements, lest you wish to get hurt. Slimes, classic. Ogres, formidable strength and liking for women whose smell it pursues relentlessly. Captured. I wonder if that applies to your party. If you have like a female pawn, do they pursue the female pawn over the male pawns? I wonder. It does? That's pretty trippy. That's cool. They do? That's crazy cool. I love things like that are like based in the lore and then actually apply in gameplay in almost like a practical way. Because if you were to do that, basically use one pawn as bait while all of the others swarm on the back end, like that could actually be really, really cool. That's super cool. Yeah, in the first gameplay they did that. That's awesome. I love that. Okay, golems. Oh, this is cool with like the faces in the stone. That's cool. Artificial life forms created by sorcerers made of strong, impenetrable rock structure that repels magic and physical attacks. The only way to halt its movement is to break the metals on its body. Shoot the purple glowing zits. You gotta do it. Chimeras. These are just cool. The chimeras look awesome. Saurians evolved from the lizard family. The scaly saurians mostly dwell near water, wield spear-like weapons. Dismembering their tails can weaken them and make them lose their will to fight. Oh, that's funny. Harpies, classic. You gotta love harpies. You gotta love them. Wolves, classic. Hobgoblins, my favorite type of goblin. Regular goblins, they hold nothing to hobgoblins, and that's it. And I know, like, there's probably some bigger, like, individual encounters, I would think, right? Because this seems like these are the kinds that you'll run into like out in the world, but I would imagine as part of like the main quest there's some specialty built encounters. Like there was the one where they said the Sphinx is going to be like very specifically hidden and not everybody is going to find it, which is kind of a cool concept where they're like, yeah, it's going to be hidden, not everybody's going to find the Sphinx, and even then you have to complete these trials to basically unlock access to her. And I think they also suggested that there's a fight against her if you overcome it.
決定した後、覗き込んでくるんですよね。これ本当にそれでいいのって。それをやりたかったんです。
I love this stuff. I love it when there's stuff in a game that not everybody's gonna find. I think it's great. One of my favorite like moments early in my gaming career. Let me ask you, did any of you guys play Just Cause? Just Cause 2 specifically? On this island in like the far northwest of the map, there is a spot you can go to where there is like a guy that runs around and just emits a ton of smoke, and he can't be killed. He's the smoke monster from Lost. You can also come across the crashed plane from the opening of Lost. It's just there on one of the beaches. And then you can also come across search, a marking in the sand. And if you search off in that area, you can find the hatch from like season 2 of Lost. And just so you understand, Lost was huge when this game came out, like huge. They didn't tell you, it wasn't part of a quest. It wasn't part of missions or anything, or certainly not the main story. It was just something you could find if you were exploring and stumble onto it, you know? And it was just super cool. It was a dynamic thing that not everybody would find. And it was just a fun little thing that you could discover, you know, super cool. And I remember the first time I stumbled onto it, I think I was trying to fly a plane. And if you like, there's a point where you go to this island in the story and it has like these big towers that shoot down any planes that get close. So you kind of have to go in on foot. So I was flying a plane over it. It got shot down. I crashed somewhere in here. And I just started running around looking for boats along the coast. And I found that search sign and the crashed plane. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I go and I find the hatch, and then I found the smoke monster, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, because I loved, like, my whole family watched Lost together whenever we would do our family laundry folding parties. We would all sit around in the living room, take all of our baskets of laundry, dump them out, and fold laundry, because in case you didn't know, I'm one of 10 kids, one of 10 So there was a lot of laundry. And so we'd all sit around folding laundry and watching Lost. And when I discovered that, I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And they didn't force people to find it. They didn't do all that. They just let you stumble onto it if you happen to stumble onto it. And it was great. And they're doing a similar thing with Dragon's Dogma 2, where the Sphinx is in the game, but not everybody's going to find it. They're very upfront. They're just like, yeah, not everybody's going to find it. It's something very few people will find. And even then, if you find the Sphinx, you have like one chance to answer these riddles properly. Otherwise, you lose access to her and it's screwed. Like you're done. You're done. It's great. It's great. And I love that. It's a sense of discovery where, you know, like around any corner, in any cave, there could be something awesome that you just don't see coming. And I appreciate it. I think it's so cool. I love it. He took my thing.